Hello everyone and welcome to the third and final part of the Hurry Up Tomorrow review. Once again, if you've never seen the first two parts of this review, I highly recommend that you watch them before you watch this video in order to better understand everything that I talk about in this video, especially considering the fact that in the first two parts, I actually go over the movie itself and why I think it's bad, whereas in this video, this is just my final thoughts on the movie and that's it. For those of you that have already sat through the first two parts of this review, let us proceed forward. Throughout this review, I have called Hurry Up Tomorrow the worst movie I have ever seen. When I started working on this review, I was like, oh yeah, Hurry Up Tomorrow is the worst movie I have ever seen easily. But after thinking about it more, I think this movie should be second place, actually. I think Food Fight might genuinely be the worst movie I've ever seen. I don't care if it's an easy target, I don't care if it's low-hanging fruit, I don't care at all. On the one hand, Food Fight at least has an understandable storyline, but on the other hand though, Food Fight is this really disgusting, really revolting, really unappealing movie. And, you know, I could say a lot of things about Hurry Up Tomorrow, but none of those three words I would use to describe this movie. I'll admit it, all of the claims that I've made of this being the worst movie I've ever seen, yeah, they're kind of hyperbole. Not really though, because this is up there as one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but it's not necessarily the worst movie I've ever seen. I'll tell you one thing though. This is definitely the worst movie of 2025 by far. There is no way we will get a movie this year that'll be worse than this movie, unless somehow they really, and I mean really, f*** up Superman or Fantastic Four or Wicked for Good or Avatar Fire and Ash, unless they somehow up any of those movies beyond recognition, I feel comfortable in calling this the worst movie of 2025. I don't care if I get backlash for saying this is worse than the Snow White remake. I would genuinely rather watch the Snow White remake over this movie. All of the controversy surrounding this movie, the poor reception of this movie, the massive box office bomb that this movie turned out to be, all of the failures surrounding the Snow White remake, and it doesn't matter because now we have a much worse movie in town. Snow White is a boring, unnecessary, controversial, and visually unappealing movie. But you know what? At least it has an understandable, comprehensible, coherent storyline. At least the things that happen in the Snow White remake actually serve a purpose to the movie's storyline. It feels like they have a reason to be happening. At least this movie has a storyline. At least the Snow White remake feels like a movie. A really bad movie, but a movie nonetheless. Hurry Up Tomorrow is not a movie. I don't know what the hell this thing is, but it's not a movie. This is like anti-cinema right here. Things just randomly happen in this movie for no reason at all, and they're never explained once in the movie. And the cherry on top is the fact that the movie decides to just end abruptly, giving you even more questions than answers. The movie doesn't have a long runtime, it's only an hour and 40 minutes, which is one of the few saving graces of this movie. If this was like a 2-hour long movie, like Megalopolis, which I frequently compare this movie to, this could have been even worse. Because on the one hand, if this movie had a longer runtime, maybe then it would actually be able to explain a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie. But given the quality of this movie's writing, I think it's more likely that if this movie was like 2 hours long, it would be full of even more things that happen that are just never explained at all. Entire plot points are brought up and acknowledged, and then after a certain point in the movie, they're just never acknowledged again. The last 20 or so minutes of the movie, where the Weeknd is tied up to this bed and Jenna Ortega's character is holding him hostage, none of the previous plot points that are important to the first half of this movie are ever acknowledged again. The Weeknd's ex is never brought up again. The Weeknd having issues with his throat is never brought up again. That weird dream sequence that he had prior to waking up tied up to bed, it's never acknowledged again. Jenna Ortega burning down this house at the beginning of the movie, it's never acknowledged again. Her mom criticizing her for burning down the house, it's never acknowledged again. The movie just ends abruptly without giving an explanation to any of these things. And it just ends up making the movie feel like an even bigger waste of time than it already is. I genuinely felt like I wasted my time and my money watching this movie. This feels like a really bad streaming movie. This feels like a really bad movie that I would find on Netflix or Amazon Prime, something like that. No, this was a theatrically released movie. This movie would have still been garbage if it came out on Netflix or whatever, but it's the fact that this was a theatrical movie. It's the fact that people had to pay money in order to see this garbage that I just find to be extra insulting. Oh yeah, and the less said about the Weeknd's acting, the better. I swear to God, if I see anyone defend this movie just because it's an original movie, I swear to God, it's not going to end well. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I am tired of the sequels and remakes as well. But I am not going to give a movie brownie points. I am not going to automatically call a movie good just because it's original. Original movies can be garbage as well. As a matter of fact, I would argue that bad original movies are even worse than bad sequels or remakes. Imagine creating a completely original movie from the ground up. It's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not attached to any IP whatsoever. It is a completely original, completely unique, completely fresh storyline. There are tons of possibilities for this movie. It has tons of potential to break out and become the next big thing. The sky is the limit when it comes to the possibilities for this original movie. And then the movie comes out, and guess what? It ends up being bad. And then that's it. It ends up being bad. More likely than not, it ends up being forgotten about, and then that's it. And I think that is much, much worse than having Star Wars 69 or Fast and Furious 420 turn out bad. There's also the fact as well that at least Star Wars 69 and Fast and Furious 420 would have understandable, comprehensible storylines. Argyle, Megalopolis, and Hurry Up Tomorrow are all original movies, and guess what? They're all terrible. And guess what? I could not tell you what the goes on in any of these movies, because these movies have near damn impossible to understand storylines. Argyle and Megalopolis are both bloated beyond belief, and I'm 99% sure that Hurry Up Tomorrow doesn't even have an actual storyline. Friendly reminder, the best movie of 2025 so far, maybe the best movie of 2025 period, is a completely original movie. It's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not attached to any IP whatsoever. It is a completely original, completely unique, completely fresh storyline with new characters. And you want to know what makes Sinners different from Megalopolis or Hurry Up Tomorrow? I'll tell you. Sinners is actually a f***ing good movie. Sinners actually has an understandable, coherent storyline. Sinners is not bloated like Megalopolis, and it has a storyline unlike Hurry Up Tomorrow. Things happen in this movie, and they feel like they have a reason to be happening. But even looking past that, it's a damn good movie. One of the best movies of the decade easily. Sinners is a perfect example of an original movie that should be supported in a time when we're getting nothing but sequels and remakes because it's actually good. If this movie was bad, like Megalopolis or Hurry Up Tomorrow, I would say, no, do not support this movie. This movie is no better than your average cash grab sequel or remake, and if anything, I'd say it's worse. But I'm not saying that for this movie, because this movie is actually good. For the love of God, do not pull out the "it's an original movie" excuse to try and defend this movie, because it's not going to work. This movie is bad. Accept it. I don't care if this is an original movie. I don't care how much you love The Weeknd's music. Nothing could ever make me change my mind about this movie. And that's another thing as well. I don't know if they deliberately did this or not. I don't know if this was done on purpose or not. But the first half of this movie just paints The Weeknd as a terrible person. Like that whole voicemail rant that he sends to his ex early on into the movie. It's like, really, is this how they want to portray The Weeknd? Again, he's not playing a character in this movie. This is just straight up The Weeknd himself. This is The Weeknd playing The Weeknd. They don't realize that this makes The Weeknd look really bad. It's gonna be really hard to listen to Blinding Lights, as much of a banger as it is, just because of this movie. Just because of the way that this movie portrays The Weeknd. And I love The Weeknd. I think The Weeknd is one of the best pop stars of the last decade. But with this movie and The Idol, it's just incredible how much his reputation has gotten worse. Abel Tesfaye, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, I apologize if I mispronounced it, The Weeknd's real name, has gone on before saying that Hurry Up Tomorrow will be the final album most likely that he will release under The Weeknd name. And this movie adaptation of Hurry Up Tomorrow is supposed to tie into that. Considering how awful this movie is, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up keeping The Weeknd for one more album and that's it. And then he starts releasing music under his real name. Because, you know, again, you could just ignore the movie and only focus on the album. The album is great, but having it end with this terrible, terrible movie, it's like, god damn, what an awful way to end The Weeknd, seriously. There's only a few positive things I can say about this movie, and that's it. The music is good, obviously. Again, I feel like that's kind of cheating to say that, but it is good. I will give credit where credit is due. The music in this movie is indeed good, even if it does feel like it's cheating to praise the music for this movie. There are two funny bad moments in this movie. The Weeknd arguing with Jenna Ortega, and he's going like, shut the f*** up, shut the f*** up. And this is supposed to be like a tense argument, and instead he just sounds mildly annoyed more than anything else. And then after the argument, Jenna Ortega hits The Weeknd in the head, and then we cut to The Weeknd falling in like that black void or whatever, and it just looks so goofy when watching it. And then later into the movie, when Jenna Ortega has The Weeknd tied up in bed, and she's going over some of his songs, analyzing them, and it's like she's trying to be like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, over here being like, most people don't know the message of Blinding Lights, but actually this song is about blah blah blah. As I mentioned before though, this second scene is only funny bad to an extent. It's funny bad at first because of how similar it is to American Psycho, and then after a while it's like, the movie decides to keep on doing this for a long time because the pacing for this movie is non-existent, and you're just like, bro, we get it. Can we move on, please? The cinematography for this movie is good, I guess. This movie looks good, but that doesn't really matter. A movie looking good doesn't matter if the movie is awful with its storyline. This movie is the textbook definition of style over substance. It has all of these interesting looking shots in it, but then it's like, it doesn't mean anything because the storyline is like, there's barely a storyline in this movie. The runtime for this movie is thankfully not that long, only being an hour and 40 minutes long. If this was like a 2-hour or so movie, it would have been so much more painful, but thankfully this movie isn't super duper long. Even if it potentially would have been better if this movie was longer, just because at least then it would probably explain a lot of the things that are in this movie that are never explained. But once again, if this movie had a longer runtime, it would most likely include more things into its non-existent storyline that would just never be explained at all. More things would happen in this movie seemingly for the sake of happening, and that's it. And finally, the movie's budget is thankfully very low. This movie only has a $15 million budget, and that's it. Now, somehow, despite having a low budget, this movie is doing awful still. This movie is flopping hard. It's only made like $4 million and that's it. And given the fact that the week after this movie, we're getting the 1-2 combo punch of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and the Lilo and Stitch remake, I think it's safe to say this movie is just dead. That's it. It's over for this movie. But at least it's not extremely embarrassing given the very low budget for this movie. I have previously looked at movies that all have unnecessarily high budgets and they end up being box office bombs because of the fact that they're bad. Hurry Up Tomorrow could have very easily joined this club, but amazingly enough, it missed out on it thanks to its small $15 million budget. I feel like it's very telling that a few of the compliments, a few of the redeeming qualities that I gave to this movie are, it has a short runtime and it has a low budget. Neither of which are actual praises towards the movie, but instead just me acknowledging that things could be a lot worse, a lot more embarrassing for this movie that has already established itself as a massive failure. None of these redeeming qualities are enough to make up for the fact that this is easily the worst movie of 2025 and one of the worst movies I have ever seen, period. The Weeknd, please, for the love of God, stick to making great music, okay? Anyone that loves The Weeknd and they're gonna assume that I hate him just because I hate this movie, no, that's not the case at all. Do not defend this movie. This movie is terrible and it's not worth your time. The Weeknd is not good at acting, okay? It's as simple as that. We saw that with The Idol and now we're seeing it again with this movie. Love The Weeknd for what he's good at, making great music. That is all I'm going to say. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios.